David is running for his life. Stripped of his position in the royal court, he is a solitary fugitive crossing the desert, hunted by King Saul and the entire standing army of Israel. The record of this evasion is preserved here in the text of 1 Samuel chapter 23. The narrative details a period of extreme physical vulnerability, where David learns to rely on a process of divine inquiry. Looking at this map of the tribal territories of Israel, we can locate the town of Keilah. While David is hiding from Saul, the Philistine army crosses the border and attacks Keilah, looting the community's threshing floors and seizing their food supply. David is already struggling to keep his own men alive, yet instead of avoiding the conflict, he pauses to ask God if he should go down and defend the city. His 600 followers resist immediately. They are already terrified of Saul, and adding a heavily armed Philistine force to their list of enemies seems like a guaranteed death sentence. Rather than arguing with his militia, David brings the matter back to God a second time. This specific confirmation, a second yes, reassures his followers and provides the resolve they need to march. David's decision to move only after the second inquiry shows a deliberate shift in priority. He chooses to act on the specific direction he received, even when it directly contradicts the survival instincts of his entire camp. After David defeats the Philistines and rescues Keilah, King Saul receives the intelligence. Saul believes David is finally vulnerable, assuming that God has delivered David into his hands by luring him into a walled city. Iron Age cities like Keilah were defined by their fortifications. Saul knows that once his army surrounds these stone foundations and locks down the gates and bars, David will have no physical way to escape the perimeter. Aware of the approaching siege, David calls for the priest's ephod, a sacred garment used to discern specific answers from God. David asks two direct questions. Will Saul come down? And will the citizens of Keilah hand me over? God confirms both fears. The very people David just rescued will hand him over to Saul to ensure their own safety the moment the royal army arrives. David does not demand their loyalty or hold the city hostage in retaliation. He simply gathers his 600 men and quietly slips back out into the wilderness before Saul can reach the gates. He leaves because he recognizes a harsh reality. The gratitude of the people he saved was conditional. Their loyalty ended where their personal risk began. Saul planned his attack based on walls and gates, but David moved based on the insight that those same walls would have eventually become a trap. David retreats into the wilderness of Ziph. In this desolate landscape, the local residents send messengers to King Saul, revealing David's exact coordinates and inviting the army to capture him. In the middle of this isolation, Saul's son Jonathan finds David in the desert. He reminds David of the promise that he will eventually be king of Israel, providing a rare moment of external validation in a landscape defined by betrayal. That promise is tested immediately. Saul's forces arrive and execute a massive pincer movement, splitting their ranks to completely encircle the mountain where David is hiding. This topographical diagram maps the final chase. We see Saul's army in red, divided to cut off all exits, while David's band in blue is pushed toward the center ridge. The red lines close the gap. David has reached a human endpoint, where there is no route through the terrain and no military maneuver left to execute. Right as the capture is imminent, a messenger reaches Saul. The Philistines have launched a massive raid elsewhere, and Saul is forced to abruptly pull his entire army back to defend the nation's borders. Because the siege was broken by a distraction Saul could not ignore, the site was named Selah Hamalekoth, the Rock of Escape, marking the physical boundary that separated the hunted from the hunter. The escape was not engineered by David's scouts or his own tactical brilliance. It was a sovereign distraction, a Philistine raid, that physically pulled Saul away at the exact moment of capture.